We had so much bullshit over plants.
You hear some weird noises. It's a little kitty.
Yeah. That's
I know,
normal.
You want to look out the window,
point.
but we have to shut it because we live on the loudest street in America.
I thought about opening my window because it's like nice out, but the air conditioning units are right by my window, and I don't trust my neighbors to not have the AC on even though it's only 60. Plus the people next door spent all day yesterday outside screaming, so yeah.
Nice.
Like, they're on the other side of the building, but it's fine. Actually, no, they didn't spend all day, because yesterday I worked on my notes until 2, and then I was like, okay, I'm done. Let's go sit on the balcony, because it's nice out. And then 5 minutes after I got outside, they were outside yelling. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? You've been quiet all day, and now you feel the need to yell. And then they were yelling off and on all day, so I couldn't sit outside.
Love that.
It's like they go outside specifically to yell. It's like, you can't do that inside.
Are these the ones who throw things and...
Oh, they're the ones who threw a mirror over their porch, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pleasant.
Oh, it's great.
The thing that I texted you about last time has been happening again.
Great.
I was woken up twice on
Oh my god.
the other day. I was so fucking pissed.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's fine now. I went to church. So.
Yay.
Oh my god, yes. So the priest was this, like, I would say 148-year-old Irish man. And at first I was like, where are you from? Like, I could not. He's clearly lived in the United States for a long time because he kind of has a Downeaster accent. But then he'll say things that I'm like, you are definitely from mainland Ireland. Because he said, and so I said to myself, that's me. I want to meet Jesus. Also, he kept talking about death a lot. Like, he's like, the worst part about death is dying. And then after that, you're set. We were like, what the fuck, dude? Anyway.
Oh my goodness.
Good times at Our Lady of the Angels in South Berwick.
I've been sitting upright for about 20 minutes so far today. So, yeah.
Proud of you.
Yeah. I set an alarm because otherwise I would still be asleep.
Look, I am barely awake right now. It has been a week.
Yeah.
I'm like so exhausted and I don't know why. I'm wondering, and I'll kill her if this is true. I'm wondering if I have mono from my cousin. I'm just so fucking tired all the time.
Mono is the worst.
I've never had it. I don't know. But I'm not like sick in any other way.
Yeah. Maybe you have what I had last semester that we still don't know what it was. And I was just randomly exhausted for 3 weeks.
And it's not like I'm not doing things. Like the other day I went out and like took a big hike and it doesn't matter. Regardless of what I do, I'm still tired.
That's just normal for me. So I can't offer any advice.
Whatever. I might paint my nails during this. Should I do green or green? I only have green.
Okay. I just almost threw my phone across the room. Okay. Hi, everybody. You're listening to The Triad, where we're spooky but sensitive. I'm Shannon.
And Hannah is clearly
filing
her nails.
Very loudly.
Shelby.
My bad. Wait, Shelby, did you go?
Yes.
Okay, I'm Hannah, and I'm, obviously not paying attention. I'll be quiet. Sorry.
Okay. It was like you're doing it right into the microphone.
I wasn't. It was down low. Can you hear it now?
Yes.
A tiny bit, but it's not as bad. Because before it sounded as if you were right next to your microphone.
I was not. I just need to get this top layer of garbage off my nails.
Okay. Do we have any announcements?
Please respect your retail workers. That's all I have to say.
RT.
Yes.
Yeah, we're very tired.
Yeah.
And very sad.
It's also been a year. Get over the fact that you have to wear a mask.
Just please,
Just fucking wear a
for
mask.
the
It's
love
been a
of
year.
God,
Honestly.
it has been a year. Stop acting surprised and upset about it. Like, just
I know
wear
I
it.
say this every time we talk about masks, but if my special ed students who have like incredible sensory issues and like are completely nonverbal can wear a fucking mask all day at school, then you can wear it for the 20 minutes you go into the store. Okay?
Yes, exactly.
Get over yourselves.
Yeah.
Literally, I wear 2 masks at work. For like yesterday, I had a 9-hour shift. So, like, if I can wear 2 masks for 9 hours and be perfectly fine, you can wear one that's not even like a real mask. You can wear your stupid neck gaiter for
Which are
20
illegal.
minutes. Yes, they don't count. And they don't do anything. You're still putting everybody at risk, but you know what? You feel like you're complying. So, like, sure, whatever. You can do it for 20 minutes and you can wear it over your stupid nose. Stop yelling at me about it. You're not special. And, oh, I have a breathing condition. No, you don't.
No, you don't. 'Cause
And if you
did,
do,
would be
then
wearing
stay
a mask.
home.
Exactly.
And
Like,
these
I
are-
have a breathing condition. I still wear a mask. Like, it's not like sometimes it is a little bit harder to like catch my breath when I have my mask on because like the fabric feels like it's like getting stuck on my face, but that just might be a me problem, you know? But even if that's the case,
and like
I go
I
off
have
to the side
major
and pull my
sensory
mask down for a
issues.
second.
Like, stop.
Yeah. No.
And yeah, you can say that like you have anxiety and it gives you a panic attack and it makes you feel claustrophobic. Okay, yeah, I had that for like the first half hour I wore one. Back
like,
last year. Get over
Cool.
it.
These
That
are
doesn't
also
give
the
you
same.
an excuse to not wear one. 'Cause
Yeah,
now you're
it's
still
not an
harming other
excuse.
people. Like,
A lot of the times, these are also the same people who were not last year, but you know, whenever the fuck the world was quote unquote normal, they were like, oh my god, these snowflakes, get over yourself,
Oh my
why
God,
can't
I
you be
know.
normal? And it's like, okay, but now you're,
yeah.
okay, whatever, I'm not even gonna bring it up.
Well, no, the people who call other people snowflakes are the ones who throw fit about, like, Starbucks not having, like, Jesus on their Christmas cups and having to wear a mask. Like,
Yeah.
whereas, you know, we get
They're the
mad
ones
when
who want to
you're
talk to the
racist.
manager.
But, you know, yeah, those two things are totally comparable.
Anyway, that's my plea for today.
Yeah.
Because the government was like, we're going to give you $1,400 to stimulate the economy, but retail workers are at the absolute bottom of the list for the vaccine. And we're going to let rednecks believe they might not have to wear a mask so they can yell at you. So it's a good time. It's been a great week.
Okay, are we good to move on to the topic today?
Yes.
Okay, I have a PowerPoint and an outline. Which I almost forgot to make a PowerPoint, but then last night at like 8:30, I was like, shit, I need to make a PowerPoint.
I like how you two are like, no, I have to have one. And I'm just like, no, don't care.
I don't do an
can
outline though, it's
suffer.
just my notes are in the PowerPoint and I need pictures because I'm 7.
Well, I do the notes first, and then I pick the PowerPoint to like match up with the notes.
That's not
You've
a thing
used
that happens to me.
82% of your storage. Leave me alone.
Wait a minute. Okay, last time you yelled at me because I had quote-unquote too many slides, and now here you are with 23 slides.
No, we're gonna go through them really, really fast. Some of them were on for like 2 sentences, and then we move on.
Mm-hmm.
No, I promise. My notes are
Oh, yay.
literally 10 pages. Like, it's fine. This is nothing. Okay, so today we are talking about Queen Lili'uokalani, who was the last monarch of any independent Hawaiian nation. Also, I'm very tired, so creating spontaneous sentences is hard for me today, so this should be fun. Not usually like this awake in the morning anymore. So, as always, I'm going to start off with explaining why we're talking about her. So this is my Women's History Month entry. I think a lot of the time with women's history and with like mainstream feminism in general, we tend to focus on white women, and we should not be doing that.
Intersectionality.
Yeah. And
Yee.
this is a really important story about American imperialism, which a lot of people like to pretend is not a thing. And a woman who, like, she basically took on the entire American government by herself, which as a woman of color in the late 1800s, early 1900s was nearly impossible.
She's so cool.
Yes, she is. So, yeah, we're going to talk about her. Also, I wrote out the pronunciations of all of these names because I obviously do not speak Hawaiian. There's only one that I have really trouble with, and it's the name of a goddess that I'm going to only mention once. But if I
So
pronounce
please
any of
DM
them...
Shannon with your hate mail.
Yeah.
That's Shannon.
Yeah.
Shannon.
Yeah, I...
Because me and Hannah don't ever do that.
Yeah, no, never.
We're never.
You know I can't read. If you DM me with things, then that's just a hate crime. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I think my pronunciations of these are correct. If they are not, I am sorry. I watched a bunch of videos for a lot of these names, and I tried to pick the pronunciations from the actual Hawaiian people, not from the white people, so...
Mm-hmm.
So.
I will say Hawaiian is an interesting language.
It is.
It's so cool. Don't they only have like 12 letters?
I think so.
Something like that.
Yeah, it's something like that. And it's mostly like, is it phonetic is the word I'm thinking of? Like, you say it how it looks, basically, but it's just got so many syllables that sometimes it's hard for non-Hawaiian people to do that, at least for me anyway.
Yeah, and they like to, not that they like to, but a lot of their words put like vowels right next to each other, and you say every single one, and so again, that's
like
not
with her name.
super common in American English, so it's
also
a little
like,
difficult for us.
Yeah. Also, just real quick too, I'm trying to think of how I meant to put something in my notes and then I forgot. Shelby, is that your stomach?
Yup.
Jesus Christ. So here in the United States, we tend to lump together Asian Pacific Islander folks for various reasons. And I had already chosen this topic before the mass shooting of Asian massage parlor workers in Atlanta this past week. And obviously, like, just because someone is Pacific Islander does not mean that they are Asian, which I believe is the case for most of the people we are going to discuss. But I just wanted to bring that up. And, you know, that whole thing was just a culmination of a year of very intense racism towards Asian Americans, which is not deserved, obviously. So, yeah. Just wanted to bring that up, too. Okay, first off, we are going to do a Hawaiian history lesson. So if you can go to the next slide.
Ooh.
It's necessary, I promise. So, we're not going to go over the entire history of Hawaii. We are going to go over relevant things to Lili'uokalani's reign, which unfortunately is a lot of white people. So,
I have a question really quick.
Yes.
Have you guys ever seen the history of Japan?
Yes.
I really wish that someone could, like, pay that guy to make more of those, but for, like, everything. Mm-hmm. So, the history of Hawaii, that would be so fascinating. Especially with his, like, songs.
Yes. Yeah, so Hawaii as a whole was first encountered by a European in, I think, 1778 by a man named James Cook. He was killed on the island of Hawaii in 1779 in a dispute over the taking of a longboat. That's all the information I have on that. I just think it's interesting. So, ancient Hawaii, which ancient Hawaii means up until 1795-ish, they had a class system with the Ali'i class at the top. Each island had a separate ruler. They were not a unified nation in any way. Well, not like that, but they were not like one, unit. All of those hereditary ruling lines were believed to be descended from the first Polynesian, who later became the Earth Mother in the Hawaiian native religion. Basically, this is a goddess. Her name is, this is one I can't do very quickly, Papahanaumokuakea, which they shorten it to Papa usually.
That is a very long name.
That's the one that I cannot do quickly. Yeah, and so in 1795, Kamehameha the Great basically conquered the other islands and created a unified Hawaiian nation. So if you can go to the next slide, this is a statue of him. So he did this with the help of Western weapons and advisors.
Can I just put in a little side note here?
Yes.
It always makes me laugh because the Kamehameha, like high school is usually in like the Rose Parade or something, their marching band, which is great. And they're very good and they deserve that, whatever. But the way that it is spelled is the same as if you know anything about Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z.
I know.
It is spelled the exact same as their like attack, which is the Kamehameha. And every single time I see like their name on the TV, like the high school's name, the Kamehameha, blah, blah, blah. Yes, that. I'm always like, they have missed the opportunity to do a Dragon Ball show. Like, please just do it.
Yeah, I don't watch Dragon Ball Z, so I didn't know that that was a thing. And then I was trying to find pictures of this guy, and Dragon Ball Z kept popping up, and I was like, what the fuck is happening? I was very confused.
Yeah. So, anyway, that's just my little... And I know they're not pronounced the same, and they're not even remotely the same thing, but every single time I read it...
Oh, no, you're not the only one, apparently.
I work at a nerd store, like, every time. I'm just like, look, it is... And our Dragon Ball stuff sells so quickly. But every time I read it, I'm always like, Dragon Ball? And then I'm like, wait, no, it's Hawaii, Shelby. Anyway.
Yeah, so Kamehameha conquered other islands, created a unified Hawaii. He did this with the help of Western weapons and advisors, meaning white people. So this ended the Ali'i ruling system instead of a constitutional monarchy that was fashioned after European monarchies. Yes, Hannah?
It just, when you said the way that clause was set up in the sentence that you just said, it's that basically you said that the weapons were the white people, which,
I
yes.
mean...
I know. Just
That's
saying.
what I meant, but
you're not wrong, but it worked well. I just am laughing at grammar. Anyway, goodbye.
Okay. So, the monarchs and other noble families are still, like, referred to as Ali'i. It's just a different system. And so, it still doesn't function. Their monarchy does not function at this point in time the way, like, England's does, for example. So, it wasn't necessarily hereditary. So, because of a Hawaiian custom called Hanai, it's either Hanai or Hanai, but I think it's Hanai, I might be wrong. Children are often adopted out to family members for various reasons, what I'll kind of get into later. It wasn't like a bad, like, it was very common culturally, and it was seen as a benefit. But because of this, genealogically, it's sometimes hard to say who's actually blood related. And so heirs to the throne were appointed out of a pool of, like, eligible people who generally were blood related to the monarch in some way, but it wasn't necessarily, like, their child or even, like, a brother or sister. It could have been, like, a grand nephew or something. And it wasn't only restricted to men. So that's part of it, too. We'll get into it a little bit more later, but that's, like, the gist of it. And so this, Hawaii now, at this point in the story, is functioning as an independent constitutional monarchy. They kind of just did their own thing for a while. There was a lot more I could have gotten into, but I didn't think it was necessary. And just keep in mind that the monarchy and the monarchs themselves were definitely influenced by white people, especially Christian missionaries and sugar planters who had moved to the islands. And then, there were some diplomatic disputes I didn't think were super important to what we're talking about today, so I didn't discuss them. But, like, stuff did happen. Just, I'm not talking about it because I don't think it's relevant right now. And then another thing to keep in mind is that the vast majority of the native Hawaiian population had been decimated by measles and smallpox by the time Lili'uokalani was born.
The white people plague. The white people weapon.
I think it went from 800,000 native Hawaiians to 44,000 in 100 years.
Holy
it was,
moly.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so, why did I phrase this like this? Oh, this was like one of the influences of the white people in Hawaii. So in 1839, King Kamehameha III, so you can go to the next slide, that's him, created the Chief's Children's School, which was later called the Royal School, and selected 16 children from the highest ranking Ali'i families to be eligible heirs to the throne. They were required to board, this was a boarding school, which was run by an American Christian missionary named Amos Starr Cook. And I don't think he's related to James Cook. Amos has an E on the end of his last name. His Cook has an E. James does not.
Cookie.
So I think that's just a coincidence. So it was run by Amos Starr Cook and his wife. The school taught only in English, and it was part of a movement led by the Christian missionaries and American sugar planters to eliminate the Hawaiian language and culture.
Fuck that.
Yeah, and Lili'uokalani attended this school. Which I just use that as an example of how white people were meddling, basically.
You meddling white people.
I'm going to be complaining about white people so much. So now we're going to go into her early life. So if you can go to the next slide. This is her as a teenager. I couldn't find any younger photos. So she was born Lili'uokalani. Crap, I forgot to write this down. Walania Kamaka'eha. Sorry, that one's just hard for me. On September 2nd, 1838, at the base of Punch Bowl Crater in Honolulu. I'm sorry, I completely forgot to write out a phonetic pronunciation of her name. And then when she was baptized, her Christian name was Lydia. I'm going to be referring to her by Lili'uokalani, which is her, queen name, which I'll get into more of that later. Every single article I read referred to her by this name, so that's what I'm going to do. Plus, I just think that's more respectful. So her family was part of the Hawaiian nobility. As I said, the Hawaiian nobility worked differently than European. Her family historically had essentially been royal counselors, but they were still related to the actual monarch, which even then, like I said, it's all just it's a bunch of people who are at least distantly blood related, and a bunch of them all have the ability to become king or queen. It's a whole thing. So she had 6 surviving siblings, and she and her siblings were informally adopted to other family members. As I said, this practice is called hanai, and again, I'm sorry if I got that wrong. I forgot to get a pronunciation for that too. It was incredibly common. It was practiced by both royals and commoners. Lili'uokalani said that she was raised by people of higher rank than her own, and that, quote, immediately after my birth, I was taken to the house of another chief by whom I was adopted. It is not easy to explain to those alien to our national life, but it seems perfectly natural to us. And that's from PBS, and I forgot to read off my sources for the first time ever, so I'm going to do that real quick. Sorry.
Wow, Shannon, you're a hot fucking mess today.
I'm so tired, dude. Okay, so I have a couple... I know, I have a couple articles from the History Channel. I got a bunch of Wikipedia. A couple things from the Star Bulletin, which is a newspaper in Hawaii, Smithsonian Mag, the National Park Service, PBS, KHON2, which is a Hawaii news station, and we have a YouTube video, but we're going to watch that later on. Okay, so as I kind of stated earlier, she attended school at the Chief's Children's School. She later stated that she had not enjoyed her experience at the school, saying she often went to bed hungry and that she was greatly affected by the death of 2 of her classmates due to a measles epidemic. So the school was actually shut down around 1850, so she was relocated to a normal day school. She finished school in 1853 at the 3rd in her class. And, after the boarding school closed, she lived with her Hanai parents. She became part of the social elite during the reign of Kamehameha IV. So you can go to the next slide. That is him and his wife, Emma. He Kamehameha IV and Emma were both classmates of Lili'uokalani, and so they were very close friends. Like, Lili'uokalani was the maid of honor at their wedding. And so for her own marriage, she got engaged to an American named John Owen Dominus in 1860. So you can go to the next slide. That is him. They had known each other since they were children. And he was a staff member and a secretary for King Kamehameha IV. They were originally going to get married on her 24th birthday in 1862, but they postponed it for a couple of weeks. Because the young son of the king and queen had passed away, and because they were friends, they, didn't want to intrude on that. So they ended up getting married on September 16th, 1862, and moved into Washington Palace in Honolulu. It was reportedly not a super duper happy marriage. There was a lot of gossip that Dominus was unfaithful. Apparently his mother...
so surprised.
Yeah. Apparently his mother disapproved of the fact that he married a native Hawaiian. And,
wow, even more surprised.
Yeah. And then they were unable to conceive a child of their own, which added to their marital tension. She did adopt 3 Hanai children, but she did this against the wishes of her husband.
Well, fuck him.
Yeah. Apparently her brother wasn't cool with it either. I don't know why, but she basically, said, fuck you guys, I'm gonna do this anyway.
Yeah, because she's freaking cool.
So she continued being involved in court. So she assisted the king and queen in raising funds to build a hospital. Apparently she went, literally door to door collecting money from people to build a hospital. She also established a female-led organization aimed at supporting the elderly and the ill. And in 1866, at the request of King Kamehameha V, she composed the new Hawaiian national anthem. She was a prolific composer and loved music, and she apparently had perfect pitch. So, we are going to go back to a Hawaiian history lesson for a minute. So, Lili'uokalani's friend, King Kamehameha IV, he died in 1863. So she was 25. He was only 29. And he died of chronic asthma. So he had named his brother as his heir. So he succeeded to the throne, and he took the name Kamehameha V. So if you can go to the next slide, that's him. So, it's kind of like in England where the monarchs have, their actual, birth name, and then they take a different, very English name to be king or queen.
Gotcha.
It's a similar thing, but because, they're in the reign of Kamehameha, they're gonna keep taking Kamehameha's name. So then Kamehameha V died in 1872, only 9 years later. And he died at the age of 42. I don't know why he died, or how he died, but he did. So, during his reign, he called for a constitutional convention, because remember, they're a constitutional monarchy. So, on August 20th, 1864, he signed the 1864 Constitution of the Kingdom of Hawaii. And so this increased the power of the king. It eliminated the office of what was essentially the prime minister. Changed the legislature from a bicameral to unicameral form. So basically, instead of having a House and a Senate, they would have only had a House, basically. He added property requirements for representatives. So if you wanted to serve in the House, you had to own property. I'm just using House as an example. That wasn't what it was called. And the voters born after 1840 had to pass a literacy test. Both of those last 2 changes were repealed in 1874. But
I was going to say, those sound very...
Yeah, I don't...
elitist?
No. So... he may have been influenced by the American sugar planters and the missionaries to institute these changes.
Real American, I was gonna say.
Well, yeah, that's probably more of what I meant.
Yeah. So I don't know that for sure. I didn't get too much into his reign because I was trying to. It just wasn't relevant.
Isn't it so horrible that American and problematic are synonymous in this situation?
I know.
Oh, it's fine.
Yeah. So, and the big issue with his death is that he died without naming an heir. And so this new constitution that he had enacted stated that in this scenario, the monarch had to be elected by the legislature. So the legislature elected a man named William Charles Lunalilo. So if you can go to the next slide, this is what I meant. We're going through these. They die really fast. So like we're going through people so quickly. So he was the first elected monarch of the Kingdom of Hawaii. He had also been educated at the royal school, just like Lili'uokalani, Kamehameha IV, and the Fifth, and Queen Emma. But then he died 2 years later without naming an heir, so they had to do the process all over again. So
why are they all dying?
God,
so
just
quickly?
write it down when you get there.
I don't know. I don't know why they're dying so quickly. I don't know why they aren't naming an heir before they die. I don't know.
Literally get into the palace and say, okay, I guess my kid or my brother. Goodbye.
That's literally what the next person does. So, during this new election, Lili'uokalani's brother, David Kalakaua, ran against Emma, who was the widow of King Kamehameha V. So, the legislature chose Kalakaua. Sorry, he has an accent over one of those A's, and so it puts a stress where I would not normally put a stress. So I keep having to, like, pause to say his name correctly. So the legislature chose Kalakaua, which caused a riot at the courthouse because apparently people were not happy with the decision. So U.S. and British troops who tended to hang around the islands to quote-unquote protect them, they got involved, and some of Emma's supporters were arrested, and all of this caused strain between Emma and Lili'uokalani's family, which sucked, because, like, they've been friends for a super long time. It was just a huge political problem. So, we should be on slide 11. Sorry, I forgot to add in a thing.
Shannon.
Sorry, I forgot to say it. So,
Wait, where am I?
you're on slide 10. There we go.
Okay.
No, we should be on 10. I'm sorry. We should be on slide 10.
Doesn't that... Okay,
I'm sorry.
dude on slide 11 looks just like Prince, just saying.
I know he does.
He does.
Yeah, we should be on slide 10. I'm sorry. Kalakaua initially named their brother, because remember, he is Lili'uokalani's brother. He named their brother William Pitt Leleohoku as heir, because Kalakaua, I keep doing that wrong, and Lili'uokalani had no children of their own, but this brother did. But then Leleohoku died without naming an heir in 1877. So Lili'uokalani was named heir, and at this point, this is when her name was actually changed to Lili'uokalani, because before it had just been Lili'u. And apparently it is a Hawaiian custom to name your child after, like, an event that was happening at birth. And so, like, Lili'u, what was it? It was, like, when she was born, like, either her eyes or her mother's eyes were, like, really, like, red and, like, crying. So, like, Lili'u means something like smarting eyes or something like that. And so her brother actually changed Lili'u's name to Lili'uokalani when he named her as heir. And Lili'uokalani means the smarting of the royal ones, because there had been a whole lot of drama as to who would be named heir, so the name seemed very fitting. It's a big whole thing.
Yes, that's really petty, and I love it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I figured out what the problem was with the slides. Slide 11 was the first heir who died, Leleohoku. I forgot to put a thing in here saying to go to the next slide. Sorry.
Gotcha.
That was the problem. My fault.
So Prince.
Yes. This is why, okay, usually I do my notes like a week in advance at least, and then I spend the rest of that week going over them to make sure I didn't fuck something up, and I did all these yesterday and didn't have time to go back. This is why
Shannon,
I do my
that's
notes so
too
far in
much work.
advance.
Speaking of which, I have a story due on Monday. I have one page.
You mean
it needs to
tomorrow?
be 20 pages. Yeah, tomorrow, Monday. I have an idea. I just don't really know where to go with it yet.
Yeah,
But we'll figure it out tomorrow.
Okay, so
20 pages worth?
Yeah, that's... One time I wrote a story the class before the story was due.
it's fine.
I mean,
Ran to the library, printed it out, ran
Yeah,
back, turned it
fine.
in.
fair. I can't say that I haven't done that. So
Yeah, same.
I just really hated poetry, so I wasn't going to pay
Yeah,
attention.
that's
I don't
fair.
hate poetry. I hated that poetry class in particular.
Yeah. Okay, so we should be on slide 12 now. We're good. Slide 12. So,
All right.
as heir, Lili'uokalani served as regent when her brother took
That's
a
a
world
big hat.
tour in 1881. We should be on 12, not 13. You're on 13.
What? Oh,
Go back a slide.
Shit.
There we go.
sorry.
That's okay.
No hat in this picture.
No hat. That's why I was like, what hat? She isn't wearing a hat. So,
Oh, okay.
So, he said that this trip was an attempt to save the Hawaiian culture and population from extinction by convincing people who were native Asian or Pacific Islanders to move to Hawaii. His political opponents believed the trip was just an excuse for him to travel. But, as I said, their population had been absolutely decimated, so, like, who knows? And so, I mean, related to that, one of her first responsibilities as regent was handling the 1881 smallpox epidemic.
Cool.
So she
Cool.
ended up taking measures such as like closing ports and stopping travel and things like that, which kept the disease contained in Honolulu and Oahu, so it didn't spread as much as it possibly could have. So that's good. She also continued with her philanthropy work. She founded a bank and a money lending group for women in 1886, which, like, that's
a big deal.
yeah. Like, women in the U.S. couldn't have their own credit card until, like, the 80s. So, like, that's crazy. Or even their own bank account, really, without approval from their husband and or father. It was, yeah. And then she also founded a Hawaiian school for girls, which I think taught in Hawaiian. I'm not 100% sure. But it was specifically for girls whose parents, like, either weren't around or they just weren't able to teach them, like, the ways of being a Hawaiian, basically. I don't know. There was this whole thing. And so she also attended Queen Victoria's Golden Jubilee in 1887. And so it was while, I believe they were still in England so she was there with a few, like, traveling companions, and she was basically sent there just, like, as a representative for the king who stayed behind in Hawaii. So shortly after the celebration with Queen Victoria, Lili'uokalani and her traveling companions learned that her brother had been forced to sign the Bayonet Constitution. So now we can go to slide 13.
Big hats.
What do you notice about all of these people? Other than
They're
the
white.
hats? Yes, they are. Thank you. So, yeah, this is a military group who forced the king to sign a constitution that they all wrote. So, there were some groups which I had trouble. This part got really confusing really, really quickly because there were a bunch of different groups comprised of white dudes who all had different names, but some of them were all members of different groups. It was the whole thing. So I cut through the confusion and just said some groups joined together with the goal of annexing Hawaii by the United States. And so these groups were mostly made up by Hawaiian subjects of American descent, which means Americans who were living in Hawaii.
Yeah, so you're not Hawaiian. Sorry.
Well,
I'm
no,
sorry.
like, no. Like, they're subjects of the nation
I
of
understand.
Hawaii. They're not Hawaiian.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. They're not Hawaiian.
Exactly.
Yeah, no. They're just subjects of Hawaii. And they're
I
of
understand.
American descent. There were also American sugar planters and some foreign residents of Hawaii. And so at this point, Americans controlled probably a majority of the Hawaiian kingdom's wealth. And
Rude.
yeah, I'm going to get into it more later. It's a whole thing with sugar. And so,
Just so you know, Yuki just tried to lay down on my microphone. So.
cool.
What's with these cats?
Yeah. So
They're
yeah,
great.
there
We
was
love them.
so there was basically a rebellion led by these groups, and they wrote a new constitution, and it was written again. I want to make this super clear. It was written by white men who explicitly wanted the end of the Hawaiian kingdom and wanted annexation. And so King Kalakaua signed this constitution on July 6, 1887, and it's called the Bayonet Constitution because he was threatened with death if he did not sign it. So this new constitution was modeled way more after the United Kingdom's constitution than what was previously in place. It stripped the king of most of his personal authority. It established a cabinet government. It empowered the citizenry to elect certain members of the government. But It increased the value of property a citizen must own to be eligible to vote, and denied voting rights to Asians, who comprised a large proportion of the population. A few Japanese and some Chinese people had become naturalized, so they had been able to vote. Now they lost that. And so this guaranteed a voting monopoly to wealthy Native Hawaiians and Europeans.
Ew.
Lovely.
Although mostly Europeans. And even then, a lot of the wealthy Native Hawaiians were wealthy because they were also involved in the sugar plantations. Not necessarily, like that wasn't a hard and fast rule, but that's another factor as well. And so it's here that I want to emphasize just how involved white Americans and Europeans were in Hawaii at the time. So sugar plantations had become Hawaii's largest economic venture, and they were mostly, if not completely, owned by Americans. And so these plantation owners had advocated for and won, quote-unquote, fair representation in the kingdom's government. And so this was driven both by missionary efforts and the economics of the sugar industry. As early as 1873, so about, 14 years before this, roughly, the United States was trying to obtain Hawaiian Islands so that they could have a tax-free import of sugar. Because then they technically wouldn't be importing it, they would just be moving it. Because they would now be domestic, so they wouldn't be subject to income taxes. They were also interested in the islands.
Capitalism.
Yes. They were also interested in the islands as a line of defense for the west coast of the U.S., especially Pu'uloa or Pearl Harbor. The U.S. has actually been leasing that since January 20th, 1887. And it was shortly after they began leasing it that the Bayonet Constitution, happened. And so, to sum it up, Americans controlled most of the economy in Hawaii and had bargained their way to an over-control of the legislature. And so going back to Lili'uokalani, after her trip, because remember, they're in England whenever, I think they're in England, they're at least in Europe when they learn about this. They canceled the rest of the trip and returned to Hawaii as quickly as they could. There wasn't really a whole lot they could do, though, and they basically just tried to adjust to the new government structure. And then her brother died in 1891, which made Lili'uokalani the queen. She was the first and only queen who ruled on her own, basically, without a king by her side, because her husband was not named king. So if you go to the next... Well, for various reasons.
I know, I just laugh because I don't like him.
He ended up being made the governor of Oahu, but there's other stuff too. So go to the next slide. This is her in 1900, which doesn't fit this event, but I wanted to have a photo of her up instead of the white assholes who overthrew her. So she... Yes.
Okay. I was just laughing because that one guy has a really tall hat and everyone else has a not tall hat.
I know.
He's just...
Look, he just wanted flexing. To live his extra life.
I guess. He also has he looks like a, oh my god, what's the fucking word? Like a drum major. Because he's got the big tall stick too.
Yeah.
Oh,
hey, remember that time, Shannon, in band when the drum major said that thing and his voice exploded?
I remember exactly that. Yes, it was hysterical.
Okay, anyway.
Yeah.
Good times.
So, Lili'uokalani became queen in 1891. So she basically tried to retain any power that she could, which wasn't a whole lot. So she was able to appoint her own cabinet members, which took a minute. She had to fight for that. But she did it because she realized that her brother's advisors all supported annexation. And she was like, okay, I don't want to work with you people if you're just going to try to, take away the sovereignty of my country. But it was a whole thing because the legislature fought her appointing her own cabinet, but she was able to do that. She named her niece Kaiulani as her heir. And then, which, did you guys ever read those, fictionalized diaries of famous women as a child?
Well,
yeah.
They didn't, they weren't,
one.
They weren't just of
no, they weren't.
famous people.
No,
there were other ones that were like, I'm a peasant.
People. Yeah.
Yes. I live under a dock.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. Yes, I read
Yeah.
a lot of those.
Queen had one of those, and I read it multiple times. Just throwing that out there.
The one I read over and over was this like African queen one, because I loved it so much because they didn't have furniture, so she sat on like a guy who's like on all fours, like he was her table, and I was like, hell yeah, girl, get it.
I still have my Anastasia one, but that wasn't my favorite. I don't even remember what my favorite one, but it was like one of the like peasant ones.
I read like all those. They were, So
I like the Pilgrim ones
the
and
Cleopatra
the
one too.
Yeah, I read the Cleopatra,
I had the Cleopatra one.
I didn't have any of them. I just checked them out from the school library all the time.
Did you guys, Emma and I were just talking about this yesterday, did you guys ever read those, what was her name? The Lady Grace mystery books? They took place in Queen Elizabeth's court, Queen Elizabeth I.
So...
Oh my god, they were great. They were all like, A, it's for assassin, B, it's for betrayal, and they were like,
those
mysteries.
Yeah. I haven't read them, but I know what you're talking about.
Oh, they're so good. We were talking about them yesterday.
Yeah, I don't think I read those.
Did you read the Alana books?
Yes.
Maybe.
Those are fucking insane.
Are they the Tamara Pierce ones?
Yes.
Okay, because I have the box sets of every single one of her books because she's my favorite author of all time. Okay, anyway.
Yeah, it's Shannon. It's the one where her and her brother switch places.
I know what they are. I have not read them. Okay. I know for a fact I haven't read them.
Anyway, they're wild.
The Dane ones are better, so.
Yeah. Anyway. So, yeah. Where was I? Crap. Sorry, I'm so tired. Okay, so, Lili'uokalani also continued with her philanthropy as much as she could. And then her husband ended up dying only 7 months into her reign, and that, like, even though it wasn't a happy marriage, she was still deeply affected by his death. And this is a quote from her: "His death occurred at a time when his long experience in public life, his amiable qualities, and his universal popularity would have made him an advisor to me for whom no substitute could possibly be found. I have often said that it pleased the almighty ruler of nations to take him away from me precisely at the time when I felt I needed his counsel, when I most needed his counsel and companionship."
That sucks.
Yeah.
Sad.
And so, yeah, she just kind of chugged along doing the best she could for 2 years. And then in 1893, you can go to the next slide. So, shortly after becoming queen, Lili'uokalani had begun receiving petitions to rewrite the Bayonet Constitution, for obvious reasons. She also ascended the throne during an economic crisis. The McKinley Act, which was a tariff thing, had crippled the Hawaiian sugar industry. So it had basically not necessarily removed, or lowered import taxes on sugar from other countries. So previously, Hawaii had, like, the lowest import tax, so they were able to sell their sugar to the United States for cheaper than another country because they didn't have to pay those taxes. And this was because of a lot of governmental finagling, and, like, there was a reason for it. But the McKinley Act basically got rid of all of that, so, you know, other countries were now viable competitors to, like, with Hawaii for sugar. And just something to keep in mind, again, if Hawaii was part of the U.S., this would no longer be an issue for the sugar planters. But they're in an economic crisis regardless. So she
Do you
yes.
ever think about how much drama and nonsense happened in the world all because of sugar and just, like, spices in general?
And cotton. Yeah. Like, we had
like,
so much bullshit over plants.
So much nonsense for sugar.
I know. Ugh.
And, like, I mean,
here's a moral dilemma.
Addicted to sugar,
I really want to
like,
grow.
Stop.
I really want to grow a lot of plants, but should I also own another human being?
Yeah.
God, it's such a hard. I can't even.
Or overthrow a government, maybe.
Or overthrow a sovereign government of brown people, because I just really feel like these taxes that I have placed on these sugar, this fucking
that
sugar
my own
cane
government has placed on a separate country. Yeah.
Anyway, tough choices. Wow, life is so rough.
Yeah, it's great.
God, everyone go live in the woods and shut up about it.
Grow your own plants.
Grow your own damn plants.
So, in an effort to combat this economic crisis, Lili'uokalani attempted to introduce a lottery system, like a normal, like, money lottery kind of a thing, and an opium licensing bill, because these would help, bring in more money for the government. Literally everyone close to her advised her against this, because they knew it would be used against her later, and it was. Overall, though, like, her primary objective with attempting to rewrite the Bayonet Constitution was to restore power to the monarchy. And so she actually had a proposed constitution, and it, quote, would have increased suffrage by reducing some property requirements and eliminated the voting privileges extended to European and American residents. It would have disenfranchised many resident European and American businessmen who were not citizens of Hawaii. And that was taken directly from Wikipedia.
Oh, no.
And, like,
that's so hard.
I think that's fair. In this situation only. You know what I mean? Because they're actively trying to overthrow the monarchy for their own economic reasons. So,
yeah,
like,
I think that you can take away someone's voting rights when they, like, shove a gun in your face and tell you to sign a constitution that they wrote.
Exactly. So, like, obviously most of the time, I'm like, no, people need to vote if they are living in a specific area. But in this one situation only, I'm like, yes, you should take away the right to vote. And so, historically, she had the right to issue a new constitution. Even under the I don't want to say even under the Bayonet Constitution, but historically, because they had been a constitutional monarchy for like 100 years at this point, she had the right to do that, but it didn't sit well with the white people in Hawaii, obviously.
Gosh,
surprise, surprise.
I wonder why.
Yeah, and so this is also a quote. I pulled a lot straight from Wikipedia because it was just written really well, and it summed it up a lot better than some of the other articles. So, anti-monarchists, annexationists, and leading Reform Party politicians that included Loren A. Thurston, a grandson of American missionaries, and Kalakaua former cabinet members under the Bayonet Constitution, they formed the Committee of Safety in protest of the, quote, revolutionary action of the Queen and conspired to depose her.
What the fuck? She's in charge. How is it revolutionary?
Right?
Well, because...
No,
I'm just trying to, like, explain it. So, it essentially... You know how in England, the Queen of England just kind of exists sucking up taxpayer money?
Yes.
And she owns all the swans.
And she owns
like
all the swans. That was essentially what the Bayonet Constitution forced Lili'uokalani to act like. Does that make sense?
So they basically forced her to be a figurehead.
Yes, they had made her a figurehead. Power. And she was trying to not be a figurehead. She was actually trying to take control of her own country. And they saw that as revolutionary because it was a revolt against what they were doing. Does that make sense?
Dumb.
It's still, no, it's fucking ridiculous. But, like, that was just how they saw it because they're idiots.
So, like, if the Queen of England was like, hey, let's go dust off that Magna Carta and get
some
shit done.
Literally, yes. And so after some fighting, which I say fighting, like, the U.S. Marines, like, showed up. I don't think it was actually, like, a battle of any kind.
After some long stares and...
Basically!
mustache twirling? I don't know.
I'm sure someone was injured. People may have been killed in this. I have no idea. I didn't see a casualty number for this incident. I don't know. But regardless, the Queen was deposed on January 17th, 1893. So this abolished the Hawaiian monarchy and established a provisional government of Hawaii under President Sanford B. Dole. Does Dole sound familiar to you?
Yeah, now we're going to get into that pineapple shit, and I'm about to get real pissed off.
Yep.
Well, I'm really not going to go into that, but just remember that Dole fruit used to be owned by someone who overthrew Hawaii. Just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
So that's why you shouldn't eat fruit, kids. Get scurvy and die. It's the non-imperialist way to be.
Yes, that was what I meant with all of it. So,
thank you. I take that to heart. I have not eaten a fruit in years.
This is why
and I don't have any teeth. I did have scurvy once. I don't want to talk about it.
It's still, I think about that sometimes, and it just cracks me up that you had scurvy.
Listen, if you're in college and
Eat an apple,
you
guys.
haven't seen a vegetable or
a fruit.
not a vegetable. What are those called? Fruit. You haven't seen. I don't even know what it's called. If you haven't had a fruit in a while, I highly recommend at least drinking a glass of orange juice.
At the very
Honestly,
least.
like, I don't know how I've never had scurvy
You know,
because
I was literally
I
just
haven't
thinking
eaten
that.
a fruit
Yeah.
ever in my life.
You don't eat fruit. I was thinking that, but I didn't know if it would be rude for me to bring it up, so I didn't.
Oh, I don't care. I'm well aware.
Yeah, no, you
Like,
don't eat fruit. I don't know how you
I
haven't
don't
gotten
eat
scurvy.
fruit. I hate every single fruit, but I do drink at least 1 glass of cran apple juice a day.
That's probably why.
So that's what's
That'll do it.
saving me.
Yeah.
There's way to
That-
that.
Yeah.
And my 1
that
glass
sugar
of
water?
milk, and that's the only thing I drink
Yeah.
all day.
So, we're about to get into a lot of, like, government diplomacy crap, and, like, I promise it's relevant, but if something, and, like, I tried to make it as clear as I could, but again, it got really complicated really fast.
Remember that if I had another podcast, it would be a political one.
No, I know, but it's just, like, it's a lot to, and I'm
just
tired.
saying I'm into this
so.
shit.
Okay, so yeah, they
help you out.
established a provisional government, which basically meant, like, a temporary government until they got something more concrete. So, this is a quote from Wikipedia. President Harrison, so, like, the President of the United States, Harrison, his Secretary of State, John W. Foster, he actively worked for the annexation of the Independent Republic of Hawaii, which is this new provisional government led by Dole. So, pro-American business interests had overthrown the Queen when she rejected constitutional limits on her powers. The new government realized that Hawaii was too small and militarily weak to survive in a world of aggressive imperialism, which this part, especially on the part of Japan. Japan's not the one who overthrew Hawaii, but okay. And this new government...
God, I hate Americans so much.
I know. This new government was formed with the express interest of being annexed by the United States. And so this new government was set up on January 17th of 1893. On January 19th, so 2 days later, a delegation departed for Washington, D.C. to ask for immediate annexation. And
Are
so,
you serious?
yes, I am serious.
Well, I know you are,
Yeah,
but like,
it's yeah. So a man named John L. Stevens proclaimed Hawaii a protectorate of the United States on February 1st. So if you can go to slide 16, that's him.
yeah, that's not.
So this
that's
dude had
not-
been the U.S. minister to Hawaii, which is basically how they used to phrase ambassadors. And he had been,
Look at that little fucking
know.
smug smile on that
Yeah.
douchebag.
and he had been instrumental in the coup. So
Ugh.
he proclaimed Hawaii to
He's
be...
so pleased with himself.
I know. He proclaimed Hawaii to be a protectorate, which they're not fully annexed yet, but they're, like, under the protection, basically, of the United States, which, whatever. And at this point...
protection.
Yeah. At this point, a U.S. flag was raised at Iolani Palace in Hawaii, and martial law was enforced. And so, obviously, Lili'uokalani opposed all of this. So she was under, I believe...
As she should.
Yeah. I believe she was under house arrest at this time. It got a little bit confusing, because there have been a couple times she may have been under house arrest. But she sent a letter and 2 of her supporters to D.C. to President Harrison to, like, represent her and make her case. By the time everyone got there, Grover Cleveland had begun his 2nd term. So if we can go to the next slide. This is Grover Cleveland. This is what I mean when I say we get through the slides really fast. We just jump around people so much. And I wanted pictures. So...
This man is an actual living walrus
I know.
in a suit.
So...
Look at those jowls.
I know. I don't know a whole lot about President Grover Cleveland, but he was anti-imperialist. He did not like what happened in Hawaii. And
Good.
Thanks, Grove Dog.
yeah, he commissioned an investigation led by James Henderson Blount. I have no idea who this man is. I just know he led this investigation. So, the investigation...
That is a name, though.
I know. The investigation concluded that the overthrow of Lili'uokalani, was illegal, and that
Good.
Stevens...
No shit.
Yeah, and that Stevens, who was the ambassador to Hawaii, and American military had acted inappropriately in support of the coup. So then Cleveland sent his minister to Hawaii, a man named Albert S. Willis, to Hawaii to talk to Lili'uokalani to propose a way for her to return to the throne. This part I don't like. They had a condition. The condition was Lili'uokalani had to grant amnesty to everyone responsible for the coup.
No.
She refused this, stating that Hawaiian law called for property confiscation and death for treason.
Because that's what they committed.
Because that's what happened. I just, like, this just drives me nuts. Because it's like, we know our people, like, overthrew you, but we'll only help you if you don't kill them. Like, what? Like, they're still not recognizing her own sovereignty. Like, if she's the queen in this situation, she can do whatever the fuck she wants to people who overthrew her. Like, no.
So, I know we made a mistake and, like, stole your throne or whatever, and that, like, now your country is sort of, like, run by a corporation, and we're really sorry about that, but here's the thing. Could you just, like, look the other way, forgive all these guys? They were being so silly, and we'll let you. We will let you go back to your throne.
Slap on the hand. Boys will be boys.
Yeah,
boys will be boys. We'll let you go back to your throne if you know you just forget about the whole thing. Don't worry about it. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. So, being the literal queen that she is, she refused that. This refusal lost her a lot of the goodwill with the Cleveland administration, which, like, fuck them if that's really how they want to handle this.
I'm anti-imperialist. Also, a woman made me feel small.
Yeah, I don't think Cleveland himself was that.
I'm just speaking about the administration as an
so
entity.
I just want to parse that out a tiny bit more. Like, I don't think Cleveland himself I think he was understanding of that decision. It was other people who were like, why is she not accepting our terms? And I think this because Cleveland still, like, tried to get her back on the throne in whatever way he could for a little while at least. So he, after she refused this, he sent the issue to Congress. And so he basically told Congress that everything that had happened had done so against the will of the Hawaiian people and that it was illegal, which it was. So at this point, Lili'uokalani changed her position on amnesty because I think she was getting desperate. And on December 18th, I meant to put Willis and I put William. That's not right. Willis demanded that, he was the ambassador to Hawaii. He demanded that the provisional government restore her to the throne, but the provisional government just flat out refused. At this point, Congress responded with a Senate investigation because apparently a provisional government can refuse an order from the United States government, and that is all they will do is investigate it in the Senate. So, this resulted in the 1894 Morgan Report. This fucking thing. So, unlike Blount's report, this report placed all of the blame, literally all of the blame, for the rebellion and the coup on the Queen. This report said that her attempt to rewrite the Constitution was what had started everything. They found every single person except the Queen not guilty of all of this nonsense.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, I wish I was.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
How do you read that and think that that makes any logical sense?
Because they want Hawaii. Like, that's why. A 1990s, like, historical review of these reports stated that the truth probably lies between the two. I think it lies more on the Blount side than on the Morgan side, but that's just my opinion. So, because of this report, the Senate was like, well, we're not going to help her, right? And at that point, Cleveland basically gave up because he couldn't, like, I don't know what other action he could have taken, honestly. And, there wasn't anything else for him to do. So.
And he was almost complete with his walrus transition at that point. Yes. And he really just wanted a bucket of fish. And
yeah.
I mean.
Like,
how could you deny that cute little mustache?
Like, I'm sure there were other things he could have done. Like, I don't want to excuse this at all, but, like, I don't know enough about how all this works to say whether or not there was more he could have done. I have no idea. So, he recognized
Well, and again, not excusing it, but as the president, like,
there's only so
you
much
do
you
have
can
other
do.
things to
That
worry
too,
about.
yeah, especially in 1894, because they're in the middle of the Gilded Age, and like there's a whole lot of bullshit going on.
Yeah.
Let's get ready for that Great Depression.
Yeah.
Right at the corner.
Yeah, there actually was a huge economic panic in 1897. So, like, I think it was 1897. Yeah. So, anyway, he recognized the new Republic of Hawaii upon its declaration on July 4th, 1894, which basically was the more solidified version of that provisional government. And again, this entire government was formed with the intent for it to become a U.S. territory and be annexed by the United States. So,
I hate it.
yeah. About 6 months later, so in January of 1895, there was a small rebellion against the Republic. It was called the Wilcox Rebellion. It had the aim of restoring the Queen and the monarchy. And it failed. But the government believed that Lili'uokalani had masterminded the entire thing, so she was arrested and imprisoned at the palace. So if you can go to the next slide, slide 18, this is her. I know that picture's not great, but it was the best one I could find. That's her walking up the palace steps to be imprisoned. During her imprisonment, she officially abdicated her throne, because up until that she had refused to do so. She officially abdicated her throne in return for the release and commutation of death sentences for 6 of her supporters who had also been arrested for the rebellion. And so this is a quote from her. I don't know if it's an autobiography or a memoir, but or even just a little thing that she wrote. It's called Hawaii's Story by Hawaii's Queen. And this is her quote. So, for myself, I would have chosen death rather than to have signed it. But it was represented to me that by my signing this paper, all the persons who had been arrested, all my people now in trouble by reason of their love and loyalty towards me, would be immediately released. Think of my position. Sick, a lone woman in prison, scarcely knowing who was my friend or who listened to my words only to betray me, without legal advice or friendly counsel, and the stream of blood ready to flow unless it was stayed by my pen. So, yeah. She abdicated her throne so that other people wouldn't have to die, basically.
Wow.
Yeah. She was tried for her supposed role in the rebellion on February 8th. There's no evidence that she was involved at all. But she ended up being sentenced. She was found guilty, sentenced to 5 years hard labor, and fined $5,000. But those were commuted on September 4th to imprisonment at the Iolani Palace. So if you can go to the next slide, that's the palace. She was confined to one bedroom in the palace with only one lady in waiting and no other visitors allowed. So during house arrest, she stitched a quilt, which is now on display at the palace, and she wrote several songs. If you can go to slide 20, that is the quilt that she made. And this is a description of the quilt from the Star Bulletin. Surrounding the Kalakaua coat of arms and framed by pairs of crossed Hawaiian flags, the center block outlines the sequence of events that changed the course of Hawaiian history, including the stitched date the provisional government was put in place, when Lili'uokalani was forced to step down, and the date of the Wilcox Revolution that precipitated the Queen's arrest. And so this quilt was actually completed after she was released, and she was released in 1895. I think she was under house arrest for about 8 months. And then on October 13th, 1896, the Republic granted her a full pardon, after which she left Hawaii for a little bit. She visited relatives in Massachusetts and then began petitioning government officials in D.C. to reject annexation. And so that was astounding for the time, that a woman of color would even attempt to petition the government for anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. It did not work, unfortunately, and Hawaii was annexed on August 12th, 1898. So, post-annexation, Lili'uokalani fought the U.S. government for a return of crown lands. Basically, all of the property that had been owned by the monarchy had been seized, and she wanted it returned. She failed in that. In 1909, she brought an unsuccessful lawsuit against the United States under the Fifth Amendment, seeking the return of the Hawaiian Crown lands. Again, that did not succeed. In 1911, she was granted a lifetime pension of $1,250 $1,250 a month by the Territory of Hawaii, which is around $33,000 a month today. And then if you can go to the next slide, this is just her. I believe in the year that she died of a stroke at Washington Palace on November 11th, 1916. And so...
That's a cute dog.
I know. Let me see. I forgot another thing for the next slide. Yeah, let's just go to slide 22. Now, so her funeral was held November 18th, 1917. After her death, a church I believe in Honolulu, rang its bells 79 times, once for each year of her life. And then this is from the, what is it, KHO, and I forgot to write it down. Yeah, the KHON2 article that I found. I believe it was anyway. I forgot to put down where it's from. I think it was from that article. So, quote, "In keeping with Hawaiian tradition, her body was taken from her house during the night so that it could not be seen. The funeral took place in the throne room of Iolani Palace. It's estimated that over 1,500 people marched in the funeral. President Woodrow Wilson sent a lei, and a representative of the Japanese emperor was in attendance. November 18th will be a memorable date to all Hawaiians as the day on which the expression of monarchy was concluded," said the Gazette. And this is just quoting like another article. It listed the funeral on a timeline of important dates in Hawaiian history, alongside Captain Cook's, quote, discovery, which they're the ones who put those quotes in, which I appreciate. Discovery of the islands, the Battle of Nu'uanu-Pali, I don't know what that is, I'm sorry, the death of Kamehameha, and the annexation of Hawaii by the United States. As she was entombed, a children's choir sang Aloha Oe, perhaps the greatest song penned by the prolific queen.
Wow.
Yeah, so just a few notes on her legacy. So descendants of the monarchy are still attempting to regain sovereignty over Hawaii. In 2016, the Interior Department issued a ruling allowing the native inhabitants of Hawaii to conduct a referendum on reestablishing a government for the indigenous community. So this government would function the same way as Native American tribes on the continental U.S. I don't know what ended up happening with that. But I do know that there are like Hawaiian language only schools in Hawaii. They are still trying to hold on to their culture as best they can. The Queen Lili'uokalani Trust was established on December 2nd, 1909. So this is while she was alive, for the care of orphaned and destitute children in Hawaii. Effective upon her death, the proceeds of her estate, with the exception of 12 individual inheritances, were to be used for the trust. So basically, she left all of her wealth, for the most part, to this trust, which helps out orphaned and poor children.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then Lili'uokalani and her siblings were recognized by the Hawaiian Music Hall of Fame as Na Lani Eha, the Heavenly Four, for their patronage and enrichment of Hawaii's musical culture and language. Or musical culture and history, sorry. So to close, we are going to listen to a 1911 recording of Aloha Oe. I don't know if it's Oe or Oe. I'm not 100% sure. So you can go to the last slide before we start. So this was sung, I am like 99% sure that this recording is in the public domain. I'm going to put it into the actual episode too so that people can listen to it. The quality's not super great because it's from 1911. You can find cleaner ones, but this is the one that I could find that was in the public domain, and it's one of the first recordings of the song. So it was recorded by Nani Alapai and Henry Clark. Alapai was a Hawaiian soprano of Native Hawaiian and Filipino descent, and she was a vocalist of the Royal Hawaiian Band. I could not find any information on who Henry Clark was, so I'm sorry. So Aloha Oe was written by Lili'uokalani in 1878. It means farewell to thee. And this is a quote. So it was inspired by like she and some, I don't know if they were friends or her like courtesans or whatever. They were on a horseback ride, and this is a quote, as the riding party prepared to return to Honolulu, Lili'uokalani glanced back at the gates of Maunawili, which is a ranch nearby, and witnessed Colonel Boyd, who was the owner of that ranch, receiving a wreath of lei and a loving farewell from a young Hawaiian girl on the ranch, which he returned with a kiss and one fond embrace. So basically, she was inspired by, these two giving each other a loving farewell. The woman may have been Lili'uokalani's sister and was married to someone else at the time, but we don't know that for sure. It's just speculation. And have you two seen Lilo and Stitch?
Yes. Clearly, yeah.
Okay, well,
I watched it 2 weeks ago.
This is the song that Nani sings to Lilo on the hammock the night before
they think
she's gonna be taken away. And so, as I mentioned earlier, Lili'uokalani was a prolific composer, and her pieces helped guide native Hawaiians through this turbulent time. Aloha Oe is her most recognized song. And this is a quote from Hawaii Magazine, which this is again speculation. We don't know this for sure because she wrote this well before any of these rebellions occurred. It's said that years later, following the overthrow, that she revisited the song and transcribed it again while under house arrest, which is why today Aloha Oe is seen as a lament of a lost country. So you should be able to just play it from there. You don't have to listen to it, but I think we should. It's really pretty. It's just kind of scratchy. Okay. That was the recording how when I got excited that I finally found it, I knocked over my orange juice. So, yeah, like I said, that was the only one I could find that's in the public that I pretty sure it's in the public domain. And I wanted to include it. So yeah, that was all I had. Do y'all have any thoughts? Or did I just make you sad?
I'm sad.
Yeah, I'm just a little sad,
Yeah.
but I'm always sad about imperialism. It's
That's
one
fair.
of my triggers.
Yes.
But
Imperialism.
thank you for sharing that story with us,
colonialism.
Shannon.
Yeah.
Yes, it was a good one.
Yeah.
Not good in
Yeah.
how it turned out, but you know what I mean.
Yes, I know what you mean.
Your storytelling was nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so. Yeah.
I mean, it is a very pretty song, but it did add a little bit to the sadness of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, from what I understand, it's mostly used as, like, a farewell kind of a song.
Well, now every time I watch Lilo and Stitch, I'm gonna cry.
Yep.
Well, now that song means so much more. Now that
Yeah.
you've explained it, like,
Yeah.
wow, that's ouch in my heart.
Yeah. Yeah, I would recommend finding a, like I said, I like this version. It's just really hard. Like, the quality is just so degraded. I would recommend finding a more recent recording on YouTube and listening to the whole thing, because it's also, that was only, like, the first verse and the chorus. It's longer.
Yeah.
So I'd recommend, if you're interested, finding a longer version. I can't insert the audio from a longer version or from a newer version because they're copyrighted.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, any final thoughts, or are we just in a fuck the United States kind of mood now?
A constant for
That's fair.
some of us, but
That's fair.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have anything else. Just that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have anything. Our ending is that we have no ending. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to The Triad. Our music is by Scott Buckley. Our audio is recorded by our sound engineers, Craig Bott and Audrey Credo.
If you like the show, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Tumblr as The Triad Podcast. Our website is thetriadpodcast.wordpress.com. There, you can find information about our latest episode, including the show notes and sources.
We're also on Patreon as The Triad. Currently, all Patreon funds will go towards the cost of hosting the show. Each tier has its own rewards, but every patron receives our undying gratitude. Do you have comments, questions, or stories? Email us at thetriadpod@gmail.com. And thank you again for listening to The Triad, where we're spooky but sensitive.